most APIs have private endpoints that should only be visible to authenticated users. It is a common use case. In this video, we're going to write a middleware function that we can use to restrict access to any of our endpoints. Let's get started. So we have our server here, it's running, and if we hit the get to /users endpoint, we'll see that we get access to see the users in the database. The goal is to restrict access to this endpoint to only users that provide the correct username and password. A good solution for this would be to write a middleware function that we can use to restrict access to the get to users endpoint. The way that we would use it is locally down here by typing, let's say, restricted, could be any name. By using it locally this way, it means that it will only affect this particular endpoint. Now, having it as a middleware means that we can reuse it to any other new endpoints that come in the future. Let's go write it. Since it is related to authentication, I'm going to create an auth folder in here. And inside of this folder is where we're going to create our restricted middleware. Of course, if we want to use this restricted middleware, we need to bring it into the file somewhere here at the top. So let's bring it in right after we import our models. And this is going to come from auth restricted middleware.js. Now, of course, we are requiring an index, but we haven't exported anything from the restricted middleware yet. So let's just stop it out to see it in action. Let's do a module.exports. And of course, this is a middleware function, so it's going to have the three amigos, rec, res, and next. For now, we're just going to return a 401 for every request that comes into the server and goes to this middleware, of course, with a message that says invalid credentials. This is going to let us make sure that the middleware is working, that we are exporting it and importing it correctly, and that it is being used by the get to users endpoint. Let's go give it a try. We should be getting a 401 unauthorized with invalid credentials. Everything seems to be working fine. Now let's go and actually implement it. Well, we are using this middleware on a get endpoint. That means that we cannot do what we did in the login endpoint, where we read from the body the username and password. Another way that we can pass information from the client, though, is in the headers. And that works even on GET requests. So that's the solution that we're going to take. We're going to structure the username and password. Out of the request headers. It is the responsibility of the client to provide a username and password headers with the correct values. Now we're going to check, do we even have those? Do we have a username and also a password? Because if we don't, then we want to return a 400 error with a message of please provide credentials. Valid credentials. Now, if we do, the code in here is going to be very similar to the code that we use on the login to verify the username and password. So we're going to grab that code, copy it here, but then we need the bcrypt library. Let's copy that, bring it here, import it at the top. But we also need this users model that we are importing on index.js. Only this time we need to fix the pathing. Make sure that you fix the pathing because index.js is going from the root into the users folder, but we need to step out of the auth folder from our middleware. So in review, we imported our restricted middleware into index.js. We are using it locally when we assemble our get to /API/user endpoint, right? So this code on our middleware is going to run before we get access to the endpoint route handler. Now inside of our middleware, we're going to use bcrypt to verify the password, right? But instead of reading information from the body, since this is going to be used in a get endpoint, we're going to read the information from the headers instead. Let's give it a try and see where we are. So if we do a send, please provide valid credentials. The reason for that is because we're checking and we say, do we even have a header with a username and a header with a password? So let's go and add. We're using Insomnia here as part of the request. Could go into this headers tab and add the header for the username, student, and one for the password. Let's make it pass. So we had a 400 bad requests with please provide valid credentials before. Let's see what happens now. Now we're getting a 401 unauthorized, and the message is invalid credentials. So what would be the valid credentials? Well, when we register this user, we go and check this, we use the password hired. So let's use that. Hired as the password, give it a try, and welcome student. Excellent. So we are now getting access to it, but this is not what we really want to see, right? We're getting a message of welcome student. What we really want to see is that after being successful with the middleware, we go and hit the endpoint, and we're not doing that right now. To fix that, we're going to replace this line over here with a call to next. Now our middleware, instead of responding to every request, is going to, on a successful login with the right credentials, it's just going to call next, and that will let it go into the next middleware on the stack, which is our route handler. Let's go give it a try now. Hit send, and voila, we have access to our list of users. Now this middleware can be used to control access to any of our endpoints. All you have to do is use it locally like we did. Of course, the server does not have any way to remember that the user is logged in, but at least now it's got a way to verify the credentials before providing access to any of our endpoints.